Do dead people have a reasonable expectation of privacy? All right, great question. Hey guys, my name is Anthony Bandiero, attorney and senior legal instructor for Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training. This question comes from an officer from Tennessee. Let's go through it. So the first question, he broke it down in three parts. The first question is, if we have a suicide or homicide victim who lives alone at the residence, is a search warrant required? Right? What about the actual owner of the residence? So imagine that you have, the victim is renting a home. Do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy? Well, let's answer those real quick. Number one is that the dead person no longer has a reasonable expectation of privacy because they cannot be charged with any crime, right? So, and you might think, but what about his estate? What about if his mom or, siblings or wife or husband are going to get his property? Well, if they're living together, obviously this person's living alone, but if the person is living with a spouse, they obviously have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the residence. But a person who happens to inherit property does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in it at this point in time because they do not legally own the property. All right. What about the owner of the residence? Right. Let's think that the homicide victim is a renter. The landlord does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the tenant's property and so forth. They have a legal ownership, but they don't have a privacy interest. Now, okay, fine. So never get any warrants? I'm not saying that because you could be wrong. Maybe somebody that killed this guy or, helped, contribute to this suicide. Actually, maybe the suicide is actually a murder, a cover-up. And maybe the person actually does have a property interest or a privacy interest. Imagine that you have a cousin, and the cousin was given a key to the residence. He has unfettered access to the residence. You didn't know all this. You learned this only later, right? But you search the residence, you find evidence of foul play, murder, etc., and guess who the suspect is? The cousin. Now, he goes to court and says, but Your Honor, I pretty much have a privacy interest. Are we going to lose that case? I don't know, but it's a damn good argument if he has unfettered access to that residence. It's almost like he's a quasi-roommate. So you could have situations like that, but usually it is very rare. So let's continue. A similar situation, there is a suicide victim and crime scene is in their room, or the death investigation is in their room, right? Suicide's not a crime. They do not share that room with anyone else, but they have roommates. The crime scene again, is not believed to be, at this point, outside of that victim's room. Is a search warrant necessary, or could the homeowner also consent? Okay, so the answer is both of these are possible. Now let's look at this. This is another thing about cops having the mentality, well, look, since I'm not looking in the kitchen, the common areas, since I'm not looking in the other roommate's room, I don't need a search warrant, even if they object to my presence. Well, think about this. Number one, they certainly have a privacy interest in the pathway to the room, right? From the front door, living room, and so forth. So they could challenge your presence there. And if you see something in plain view, you knew that they objected to your presence, then why would you be doing that, right? And number two, if a person is objecting to your presence, right, and their roommate killed themselves or whatever, don't you think that it's very suspicious that they're not allowing the police, CSI, etc., to do their investigation? They actually may be up to something, or they may have criminal activity themselves. So that may be a situation where you do want a search warrant, just in case things start falling apart. Can they give consent? Of course they can give consent. Anybody can give consent. Even a person in custody can give a consent. So let's say, for example, the roommate is the suspect. He killed his other roommate. Can he give you consent to process that crime scene? The answer is absolutely yes. Look at United States versus Watson, U.S. Supreme Court, 1976, where the person was in custody and still consented to search their car. However, do things right, okay? Get that consent in writing. Make sure it's on body cam, things like that. Make sure that the person has the ability to revoke and or modify that consent. If you say, hey, can I process this crime scene and so forth, or suicide scene, and then they're also under arrest for something else, and they take off to go to jail, how is that person going to modify or revoke that consent? So those are things that you want to kind of think about, right? And so forth. All right, finally, in this trip down suicide lane here, I do search warrants on deceased victims' cell phones. This cop is like, I just do them, right? Whether it's a homicide or a suicide. However, on overdoses, these suicides, these overdose cases, there are detectives who believe that there is no expectation of privacy and therefore a search warrant is not even necessary. What do you think about that? All right, I think you may know my answer. The answer is that a search warrant is not required because the dead person does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy. However, caution to the wind. If you start searching this cell phone without a warrant, and you start, and you find evidence of the pusher, the guy who sold the drugs, and he's just a friend, he's just a person who sells drugs, we're good here. That person cannot complain about your search of that victim's cell phone. So if he gets charged with murder, it is what it is, right, on him. However, there may be some situations where the pusher, the drug dealer, does have a privacy interest. Let's say the spouse is claiming to be the victim here too. Oh my God, my husband died of an overdose. I don't do drugs or whatever it is. But you find out through the text message that she was the one that acquired the drugs and gave it to her husband. And now the husband had a fentanyl overdose. Now you want to go after her. Does she likely have a privacy interest in the cell phone? Yes, they probably paid the bills together. She probably has the code to the phone. She's probably accessed that phone several times before on her own because that's what spouses allow. So you may be playing with fire if there's any chance that somebody else that has a privacy interest in that cell phone is part of the crime. However, it is rare. Okay? It is rare. All right. That is your answer. So in summary, dead people don't have a privacy interest. If you have an objecting roommate, get a warrant, right? Yes, the roommates can also give consent. And when in doubt, get that paper that says search warrant. I hope this has helped this very good discussion. If you like what we're doing here at Blue to Gold, all we ask is that you hit the like button that shows YouTube that, hey, show this video to more people likely situated. Hit the subscribe button, share with your friends. Okay, and if you have a question for me, go to bluetogold.com, look for the link for Ask a Question. Until next time, my friends, you stay safe.